Okay, class, here we go again. Before we really get started with working with similar figures, I want to make sure that we have a pretty decent understanding about some things, and I want to start with congruent polygons. Hopefully we understand that a polygon actually is a combination of three or more line segments. What are we talking about when we talk about line segments? If you were positioned to start at a point and go to another point, that's a line segment. So we said three or more. So if we were to start here and go here, that again is a line segment. And if we were to take this one and go here, then that's also is a line segment. So exactly three line segments, and we can name these line segments for the most part. Let's say the first one we drew was line segment KL, and the second one we drew was line segment KM, and then of course the third one we drew was LM. Okay, so now we can also, just by creating these line segments, see we have created a triangle. Well, we said we wanted to take a look first and see what congruent polygons are. So we see, let's create another figure. I'll put my line back, get my line draw, and let's say we have a figure, and let's call this, oh, I didn't pick up my line, man. I want my line, because the line does it straighter than anything else. So let's say we want to draw a line segment here, and we'll just call that line segment R and P. Okay, now let's say we want to create another line segment, because I think we said we had to have three. So let's draw this one here, and let's call that one RQ. Okay, I don't look like a Q. Let's see, can we do a little better than that? A little better. And then we draw a third, and this one will run from Q to P, and we'll call this QP. So we have our three particular segments. Now, when we talk about congruency in the segments, we say that a congruent segment have the same length, and we say that congruent angles have the same measure. But if we notice here, we don't have any length mentioned and no measurement. But what we can do is we can use what's called tick marks to be able to show you what we consider congruent or not. So we can look, and let's say we consider L and M congruent to QR. Okay, so we're talking about length here. And well, you know, before I do that, let me do something totally different. Okay, so what I want to do is I do want to go ahead and add in some measurements. So let's say that this is angle K, and let's say angle K is 30 degrees. And let's say that this is angle L, and let's say angle L is 80 degrees. And then of course this is angle M, and let's call angle M 70 degrees. So am I making these up to a certain point? Yes, but I know that a triangle, if we laid these all the way out, it would give us a straight line, and that straight line equals to 180 degrees. Okay, so this we know. Well, if we look at this triangle, and let's just automatically say that this is 70 degrees, and let's call Q, should make these a little bit bigger, guys. I really apologize, so that way I can really show you the concept that I'm trying to get you to see. Well, let's call this 80 degrees, and let's call this one 30 degrees. Okay, so now I can get back to what I was trying to get you to see with my tick marks. That if we look at these particular angles, because we're saying that congruent polygons have congruent angles, or congruent angles have equal measurements. So if we look at K and P, we see that they both measure 30 degrees. If we look at Q, we see that it is 80 degrees. So and then we also look at R, and it's 70. So where we can look just by the measurements alone, we can see that line segment LM and QR, we'll say are congruent, because we're strictly going on measurements. And then we can look at 80 and 30, and over here, same measurement. Okay, and then we see 30, 70, 37, 30, 70, same measurement. Let me undo that. I want this to definitely be something that you can go back to. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and then we go over here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so remember, you may have to look at this a couple, 2 or 3 times. Anyway, so now back to what we were saying. Now, if we're going to analyze what we have as far as our statements that we're trying to contend, we can say that, again, corresponding angles are congruent. So let's just go ahead and write that here. Just by looking, I'm going to go ahead and get my 180 degrees out of the way here, if you don't mind, because I need to use some space. So we can say corresponding angles are congruent. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So, okay, so we said that these particular corresponding angles are congruent. And I'm saying that because I see K is at 30 degrees and I see P is at 30 degrees. So what I can write, I can say that angle K, and that little symbol there means angle. So if you ever see a little symbol that looks like that, or actually it looks a little different. So you see a little symbol that looks like that. I'm still drawing this thing. We're trying to keep it from looking like a greater than or less than. We'll just say here, if you see a symbol that look like this one, it means angle. So we see that angle K and angle P are the same. So we can say that angle K and angle P is congruent. Okay, so angle K is congruent to angle P. That's what we can say. And this little symbol means congruent. So now we can also look again and see that L and Q are both 80 degrees. So we can say that angle L is congruent to angle Q. Okay, if we look a little bit further, we see that M and R has the same measure. So we can say angle M is congruent to angle R. Okay, so putting this together, again, we can say our corresponding angles are congruent. So we can also say that if they are congruent, then our corresponding sides are congruent. Okay, so what do we mean by that? Well, we're actually talking about those line segments that we created. So we see that line segment LM, and you write that by writing the alphabets and putting a line across it, is congruent. And what is it congruent to? Well, of course, QR. You can see the measure and the one tick mark. So QR, line segment. Okay, we can also say, looking here, that KL, so line segment KL, that's what that means, is congruent to PQ. Why am I getting that from? 30, 80, 30, 80, and 2 tick marks. And I want to go ahead and put, since I started with K here and P is here, so I'm going to make sure that I put them the same, PQ. And then we can look at, lastly, we can see that KM, line segment, KM is congruent to line segment, because it's starting at 30, see, K 30, P 30, PR. You have to make sure there that you're very, very careful and make sure that where you're starting them, you know, is where you started the other ones too. So again, this is something for you to use, and I just put it there strictly for you to use to determine whether or not you understand what congruency is. And we're not going to spend any more time into this. It's just that now you should be able to look at a figure and determine what angles match, what corresponding parts match to each other, and why they match to each other, and actually whether the sides are actually congruent or not. Okay, I hope this is helpful. If not, listen, just come back and look at it and look at it and look at it, and then maybe easily you can move on to what we're actually set to do, which was looking at similar figures.